When people look at a life filled with achievements, they often imagine that success automatically creates happiness. They see the companies, the headlines, the innovation, the wealth, the recognition, and they assume there must be a permanent feeling of satisfaction waiting at the top. That is one of the biggest illusions our culture has ever created. We celebrate milestones, awards, and victories, but we rarely ask what happens after the applause fades. We rarely ask what it feels like when you return home, the room is quiet, and there is no one there who truly understands not what you've accomplished, but who you are beneath it all. I have spent countless hours thinking about impossible problems, building technology, solving engineering challenges, imagining humanity's future. Those pursuits demand focus, sacrifice, and an almost obsessive commitment. They teach you how to push beyond limits. They teach you resilience. But there is something they cannot teach you. They cannot teach you how to create a meaningful relationship. They cannot teach you how to love another person deeply enough to let them see your fears instead of only your strengths. That's a completely different challenge. You can design machines that think faster than humans. You can send rockets beyond Earth's atmosphere. You can change industries that people once believed could never change. Yet none of those accomplishments automatically prepares you for the simple act of sitting beside someone you love and telling them, "Thank you for staying with me," or "I'm afraid," or "I don't have all the answers." Success rewards certainty. Love often begins with vulnerability. For years, many people convince themselves that love can wait. They believe they first need to become successful enough, wealthy enough, respected enough, or secure enough before opening their hearts. They create an invisible finish line that keeps moving farther away. First it's the promotion, then it's the business, then it's financial freedom, then it's one more achievement, one more goal, one more project. And without realizing it, they spend years preparing for a life they never actually stop to live. The strange thing about ambition is that it always gives you another mountain to climb. You reach one summit, and suddenly another appears in the distance. That isn't necessarily a bad thing. Progress is part of human nature. Curiosity pushes civilization forward. Dreams inspire innovation. But if every new mountain pulls you farther away from the people who matter most, eventually you'll discover that reaching the top feels surprisingly empty, because victories become memories much faster than we expect. Think back to the biggest achievement in your own life. Maybe it was graduating, maybe it was getting your first job, maybe it was starting a business or buying your first home. At the time, it probably felt like the most important day imaginable. But years later, what do you remember most? Is it the certificate, the paycheck, the applause? Or do you remember the people who hugged you, the family member who believed in you before anyone else did, the friend who celebrated with you, the person whose smile made the entire moment unforgettable? Achievements create moments. People give those moments meaning. That is something many of us learn far later than we should. The world measures your value by numbers: revenue, followers, awards, rankings, market value, titles. But the heart has a completely different measurement system. It asks questions that no financial report can answer. Who do you trust? Who knows the version of you that no one else sees? Who still believes in you when everything falls apart? Who would sit beside you without caring about your status, your influence, or your success? Those are the people who make life extraordinary. And here's something I've come to appreciate more with time. The people who truly love you are never impressed by your resume. They're interested in your presence. They don't need perfection. They need honesty. They don't remember every accomplishment you've collected. They remember whether you listened, whether you laughed with them, whether you showed up when they needed you most. The greatest relationships aren't built during celebrations. They're built during ordinary evenings, difficult conversations, unexpected failures, and quiet moments when nothing remarkable is happening except two people choosing each other again. Those moments rarely make headlines, but they shape a lifetime. If your calendar is full but your heart is empty, something needs to change. If your schedule has room for every meeting but no room for the people you claim to love, then success has quietly become your prison instead of your freedom. The purpose of building an extraordinary life is not simply to stand alone at the finish line. It is to bring someone with you, to create memories worth sharing, victories worth celebrating together, and a future that feels richer because it is lived side by side. At the end of every journey, no one remembers how many nights you stayed at the office. They remember whether you were present when it mattered most. Because the greatest achievement is not building a life that impresses the world. It is building a life that someone is grateful to share with you. One of the most dangerous sentences we ever tell ourselves is, "I'll do it later." It sounds responsible, it sounds patient, it even sounds wise. We convince ourselves that there will be a better moment, a quieter season, a time when work slows down, when life becomes less complicated, when we finally have enough money, enough confidence, enough certainty. We promise ourselves that once we reach that point, we'll make the phone call, take the trip, express our feelings, rebuild the relationship, or finally spend time with the people we love. But life has a way of exposing the weakness in that promise. The future we imagine is always more organized than the reality we live. We expect tomorrow to give us more time than today ever could. Yet tomorrow arrives carrying its own deadlines, its own responsibilities, its own unexpected challenges. Before we know it, weeks become months. Months become years. And what we kept postponing quietly becomes part of our list of regrets. I've always believed in thinking long term. Great things are rarely built overnight. Whether you're creating technology, solving global problems, or pursuing an ambitious vision, patience is essential. But there is a difference between patience and postponement. Patience means you're steadily moving towards something that matters. Postponement means you're standing still, hoping life will eventually become easier. It rarely does. Life doesn't pause while we're getting ready. The people we love continue growing older. Parents develop gray hair that wasn't there last year. Friends move away. Children become adults before we realize how quickly they were changing. Relationships evolve every single day, whether we invest in them or not. Time never asks whether we're ready. It simply keeps moving. That's why the greatest opportunities in life often arrive disguised as ordinary moments. It's not always a dramatic event that changes everything. Sometimes it's choosing to stay a little longer after dinner instead of rushing back to work. Sometimes it's answering a message immediately instead of thinking, "I'll reply later." Sometimes it's getting on a plane to visit someone you've been missing instead of waiting for the perfect weekend that never seems to come. Those small decisions seem insignificant in the moment, but years later they become the memories that define your life. Think about how often we optimize everything except our relationships. We optimize our schedules, we optimize productivity, we optimize investments, sleep, nutrition, business strategies, and daily routines. We spend enormous amounts of energy making our professional lives more efficient. Yet, when it comes to the people who matter most, we often assume they'll simply understand. We assume they'll wait. We assume they'll always be there. That assumption has broken more hearts than almost anything else. Love isn't sustained by good intentions, it's sustained by consistent presence. The people who care about you don't simply need to know that you love them, they need to experience it. They need your attention, your time, your curiosity, your willingness to stop looking at your next objective long enough to truly see them. Because nothing makes another person feel more valuable than being fully seen. I've learned that the most meaningful conversations are almost never scheduled. They happen unexpectedly, late at night, during long drives, over simple meals, while walking together with nowhere urgent to be. Those moments can't always be planned, but they can be protected. The problem is that modern life constantly convinces us that being busy is the same as being important. It isn't. You can fill every hour of your calendar and still miss the moments that matter most. You can answer every email, attend every meeting, hit every deadline, and still fail at the one thing no career can replace: the relationships that give your life purpose. Success gives you opportunities. Love gives those opportunities a reason to exist. One day, every project reaches completion. Every product eventually becomes outdated. Every breakthrough inspires an even bigger challenge. That's the nature of progress. There is always another goal waiting beyond the one you've just accomplished. But the people in your life are not milestones to revisit whenever it's convenient. They are living stories unfolding right now. Every conversation you delay is one conversation you'll never have in exactly the same way again. Every hug you postpone belongs to a version of someone who will never exist again. Every chance to say, "I appreciate you," disappears the moment time moves forward. That realization changes everything. It reminds you that the perfect time isn't hidden somewhere in the future. It has always been disguised as today. If there's someone you've been meaning to call, don't wait for a holiday. If there's someone you've been wanting to forgive, don't wait until pride feels comfortable. If there's someone whose presence makes your life richer, don't assume they'll always know what they mean to you. Tell them, not because life is guaranteed to end tomorrow, but because nothing in life is guaranteed to stay exactly as it is today. The greatest tragedy isn't losing someone unexpectedly. The greatest tragedy is realizing you had countless opportunities to be present while they were still there, and believing you had more time than you actually did. So stop waiting for life to become less busy, less uncertain, or more convenient. The perfect moment has never existed, and it never will. The only moment that has ever truly belonged to you is this one, and the people you love deserve it before time quietly takes the choice away forever. There is another lesson that took far longer to understand than any equation, engineering problem, or business challenge I have ever faced. We often assume that intelligence is the answer to everything. We believe that if we can think hard enough, analyze deeply enough, and plan carefully enough, we can solve almost any problem. That mindset works remarkably well in science. It works in engineering. It works when you're designing complex systems or building something that has never existed before. But love doesn't follow the same rules. Love is one of the few areas in life where intelligence alone is not enough. In fact, sometimes the smarter you are, the easier it becomes to overthink everything. You analyze every conversation. You search for hidden meanings in every message. You calculate every possible outcome before making a move. You convince yourself that waiting is safer than speaking, that silence is wiser than vulnerability, and that protecting your heart is more important than revealing it. Before long, you're not avoiding pain. You're avoiding connection. It's strange, isn't it? We can stand in front of thousands of people and deliver a presentation. We can negotiate billion-dollar deals. We can launch ambitious projects knowing the world is watching. Yet the thought of looking one person in the eyes and saying, "I love you," or "I need you," or "I was wrong," can feel far more intimidating than any public challenge. Why? Because technology can be controlled. People cannot. Machines respond to logic. Human hearts respond to honesty. And honesty always carries risk. That's what makes love courageous. Real love asks you to remove the armor you've spent years building. It asks you to stop pretending you have everything figured out. It asks you to admit that beneath your confidence, your achievements, and your carefully constructed image, there is still someone who fears rejection, disappointment, and loss. Every human being carries those fears. Some simply become better at hiding them. Many people believe courage means never feeling afraid. I don't think that's true. Courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is deciding that something matters more than fear. It's sending the message even when your hands shake. It's making the phone call even when you don't know how it will be received. It's apologizing without knowing whether forgiveness will come. It's choosing honesty even when silence would be easier. That's the kind of courage relationships are built on. Think about the moments that change lives forever. They rarely begin with certainty. They begin with someone taking a risk. Someone says, "Would you like to have dinner with me?" Someone says, "I've been thinking about you." Someone says, "I'm sorry." Someone says, "Can we start again?" Those are ordinary sentences, yet they carry extraordinary power because they require emotional bravery. Too often, we wait until we're absolutely sure before expressing how we feel. But certainty is a luxury life rarely offers. There is no algorithm that can guarantee someone will love you back. There is no formula that eliminates heartbreak. There is no prediction model capable of calculating every emotion another person will experience. And maybe that's exactly the point. If love could be guaranteed, it wouldn't require faith. If relationships came with certainty, they wouldn't reveal character. Some of the greatest innovations in history happened because people accepted uncertainty. They believed in possibilities that others couldn't see. They invested years into dreams with no promise of success. They failed repeatedly and continued anyway, because they believed the outcome was worth the risk. Love deserves that same mindset. Not reckless emotion, but courageous commitment. Choosing someone every day is one of the most ambitious projects you'll ever undertake. It requires patience when emotions fluctuate. It requires forgiveness when mistakes happen. It requires humility when your pride tells you to walk away. And above all, it requires consistency. Because love isn't proven by one dramatic moment. It's proven by 1,000 ordinary choices made over time. There is another misconception that quietly damages relationships. We often think vulnerability makes us weak. We assume that revealing our emotions somehow reduces our strength. But in reality, pretending not to care requires very little courage. Building walls is easy. Keeping people at a distance is easy. Convincing yourself that you don't need anyone is easy. Opening your heart is the difficult part. The strongest people I've ever known were not those who never experienced pain. They were the ones who refused to let pain convince them to stop loving altogether. They understood that disappointment is part of life, but isolation should never become a permanent strategy. Every meaningful relationship asks one simple question: are you willing to be seen for who you really are? Not your achievements, not your reputation, not the version of yourself you present to the world, the real you. The one with dreams, doubts, imperfections, fears, hopes, and scars. Because genuine love doesn't begin when someone admires your strengths. It begins when they know your weaknesses and choose to stay anyway. That kind of connection cannot be purchased. It cannot be engineered. It cannot be manufactured through success, influence, or status. It can only be earned through honesty, trust, and the willingness to risk your heart without demanding guarantees in return. So if there's something you've been afraid to say, remember this. Your intelligence may help you build extraordinary things, but only courage will help you build an extraordinary life. And in the end, history will remember what you created, but your heart will remember whether you had the courage to truly love before time made the decision for you. One of the greatest misconceptions about relationships is that they fall apart because people stop loving each other. Sometimes that's true, but more often something much quieter happens first. They stop communicating, they stop expressing what they feel. They begin replacing honest conversations with assumptions, silence, and emotional distance. And little by little, two people who once felt inseparable begin living in completely different worlds. Even while standing in the same room, distance is not always measured in miles. Sometimes it's measured in words that were never spoken. I've learned that silence can be incredibly powerful. Silence helps you think. It gives you clarity. It allows ideas to grow without distraction. Some of the most important breakthroughs begin in quiet moments. But there is another kind of silence that doesn't create clarity. It creates confusion. It doesn't protect relationships. It slowly weakens them. That's the silence of unspoken feelings. It's the silence that says they probably already know how I feel. It's the silence that whispers, I'll tell them later. It's the silence that convinces you this isn't the right moment. And before you realize it, days become months, months become years, and what could have been resolved in a single conversation becomes a wall that neither person knows how to climb. The strange thing about human beings is that we are incredibly advanced at communicating with technology, yet we often struggle to communicate with each other. We can instantly send information across the planet. We can connect devices separated by thousands of miles. We can create systems that exchange billions of pieces of data every second. Yet, sometimes we can't look someone we love in the eyes and simply say, I've been hurting. That isn't an intelligence problem, it's a courage problem. Many relationships don't end because of one catastrophic event. They end because of hundreds of tiny moments where honesty was replaced by hesitation. One person waits for the other to speak first. The other does exactly the same. Pride quietly takes the place of vulnerability, and before long, both people are protecting themselves from a conversation that could have saved everything. Pride is a strange thing. It often disguises itself as strength, but in reality, it is usually fear wearing confidence as a mask. It tells you not to call first because you might look desperate. It tells you not to apologize because they should apologize first. It tells you not to admit you miss someone because they might not feel the same. So both people wait, and life keeps moving. I've come to believe that some of the most painful regrets don't come from saying the wrong thing. They come from never saying the right thing at all. Think about the conversations you've postponed. Maybe there was someone you wanted to thank but never did. Someone you wanted to forgive but kept waiting. Someone you wanted to tell, "I'm proud of you," or "I still care about you," but convinced yourself there would always be another opportunity. We assume those opportunities will keep coming. Life makes no such promise. Every relationship exists within a limited amount of time. We don't know how much time we have with parents, siblings, friends, partners, or even the people we only recently met but somehow changed our lives forever. That's not a pessimistic thought. It's a reminder to stop treating meaningful conversations as optional words matter. Not because they're perfect, but because they allow another person to understand the world inside you. No one can read your mind. The people who love you can notice your silence, but they can't always understand its meaning. What you interpret as obvious may be completely invisible to someone else. You may believe your actions already express everything you feel, while the other person quietly wonders whether they still matter to you. That's how emotional distance grows. Not through hatred, through misunderstanding, and misunderstandings multiply wherever communication disappears. There is incredible power in one honest conversation. One conversation can restore years of trust. One apology can end a conflict that has lasted far too long. One sentence, "Can we talk?" has the ability to change the direction of an entire relationship. Never underestimate what can happen when two people choose honesty over ego. I've also learned that listening is just as important as speaking. Most people don't truly listen. They're preparing their next response while the other person is still talking. They're defending themselves before they've even understood what was said. Real listening requires humility. It requires putting aside your need to be right long enough to understand another person's experience. Sometimes people aren't asking you to solve their problem, they're asking you to understand it. That small difference changes everything. Imagine how many relationships could be transformed if both people spent less energy trying to win arguments and more energy trying to understand each other's fears. Imagine how many families could heal if someone decided that protecting the relationship mattered more than protecting their pride. Imagine how many friendships would survive if one person simply reached out instead of waiting for the other to make the first move. The strongest bridges are not built from perfect agreement. They're built from repeated acts of honesty, patience, forgiveness, and trust. Every difficult conversation becomes another beam supporting that bridge. Every sincere apology strengthens it. Every vulnerable truth makes it harder for misunderstanding to tear it apart. If someone matters to you, don't let silence become their interpreter. Don't assume they already know what your heart has been trying to say. Speak while you still have the chance. Listen while they are still willing to share. Choose courage over comfort, conversation over assumption, and love over pride. Because the greatest distance between two people is never measured by the miles that separate them. It is measured by the feelings that remain trapped inside their hearts until it's too late to set them free. As we move through life, it's easy to believe that the next possession, the next achievement, or the next milestone will finally give us the feeling we've been searching for. We tell ourselves that once we own the house, buy the car, build the company, or reach financial freedom, everything else will naturally fall into place. There is nothing wrong with building, creating, or dreaming big. In fact, human progress depends on people who are willing to imagine a better future. But somewhere along the way, many of us begin measuring our lives by what we own instead of by who walks beside us. That is a dangerous trade, Possessions can improve your lifestyle, but they cannot replace the warmth of genuine human connection. A beautiful home feels very different when it's filled with laughter than when it's filled with silence. A luxury car may take you anywhere in the world, but it cannot hold your hand when life falls apart. The most advanced technology can connect billions of people across continents, yet it still cannot substitute for the comfort of looking into someone's eyes and knowing they truly understand you. The world often celebrates accumulation: more money, more influence, more recognition, more success. But if we're not careful, we begin chasing more so relentlessly that we overlook what has always mattered most: the people who believed in us before anyone else did, the friend who answered the phone when everyone else was too busy, the parent who sacrificed quietly without expecting applause, the partner who stood beside us during seasons when there was nothing glamorous about staying. These people rarely ask for trophies, they ask for our time. And time is the one currency that never returns once it's spent. One of the greatest misconceptions about wealth is that it can buy back what neglect has taken away. It can't. Money can purchase experiences, but it cannot recreate a missed childhood. It can buy a vacation, but it cannot recover years of emotional distance. It can build a larger house, but it cannot rebuild trust that slowly disappeared through absence. Some things become more valuable precisely because they cannot be bought. Presence is one of them. Think about the moments you remember most vividly from your own life. Chances are they weren't the moments when you acquired another possession. They were moments shared with people. A conversation that changed your perspective. A family dinner where everyone laughed until it hurt. A road trip with no particular destination. A quiet evening where nothing extraordinary happened except realizing you were exactly where you wanted to be. Those moments never appear on a balance sheet, yet they become the richest part of your life. The irony is that we often sacrifice those very moments while trying to create a better future for the people we love. We work longer hours so we can give them more opportunities. We chase bigger goals because we want to provide security. Those intentions are noble, they come from love. But sometimes, in trying to give people everything, we accidentally stop giving them ourselves. No gift can replace your presence, no achievement can hug your child, no promotion can sit beside your parents during dinner, no investment can tell someone, "I'm proud of you." Those responsibilities belong only to you. There comes a point when every ambitious person has to ask a difficult question. Am I building a life, or am I simply building a career? Because those are not always the same thing. A successful career is something you create. A meaningful life is something you share. The difference matters. As technology continues to evolve, our ability to accomplish incredible things will only increase. We'll solve problems that once seemed impossible. We'll make discoveries that reshape industries and improve billions of lives. But no matter how advanced civilization becomes, one truth will remain unchanged. Human beings will always need love. We will always need belonging. We will always need someone who knows our story beyond our accomplishments. Success may earn admiration, but relationships earn significance, and significance lasts far longer. When you look back decades from now, the details of many business meetings will fade. The numbers on financial statements will blur together. Awards will collect dust. Even your greatest professional victories will eventually become chapters in history. But you'll remember the people. You'll remember the late-night conversations that gave you hope when everything seemed impossible. You'll remember the smile that made a difficult season bearable. You'll remember the hand that reached for yours during uncertainty. Those memories become your real wealth. I've come to believe that every day presents us with a quiet choice. We can spend our lives collecting things, or we can spend our lives collecting moments. One collection grows larger but eventually gets left behind. The other becomes part of who we are forever. Choose wisely, call the person you've been thinking about. Visit the family member you've been too busy to see. Put the phone down during dinner. Stay a little longer after the conversation should have ended. Celebrate someone's success without checking the time. Listen without planning your next meeting. Be fully present. because presence is the purest form of love. One day, everything you've built will belong to someone else. Every possession will eventually change hands. Every material achievement will become part of another generation's story. But the kindness you showed, the time you gave, the love you expressed, and the memories you created will continue living in the hearts of the people whose lives you touched. In the end, your greatest legacy will never be measured by what you managed to own. It will be measured by how deeply you chose to love the people who could never be replaced before time quietly took the opportunity away. As we come to the end of this conversation, I want to leave you with one thought that has become impossible for me to ignore. There are moments in life when everything becomes surprisingly clear. The noise fades, the deadlines lose their urgency, the endless race toward the next achievement becomes quieter. And in that silence, one person comes to mind, not because you forced yourself to think about them, but because your heart never stopped carrying them. Life has an extraordinary way of revealing what truly matters. It doesn't always happen during your greatest victories. Sometimes it happens after a long day when the world finally becomes quiet. Sometimes it happens while watching a sunset, sitting on a flight, driving alone, or looking back at old photographs. You suddenly realize that the person you kept telling yourself you would call someday is still the person you wish were there today. That realization deserves your attention. We spend so much of our lives believing there will always be another opportunity, another birthday, another holiday, another conversation, another chance to explain what we really meant or to apologize for what we should never have said. We imagine life as though it offers unlimited retries, but reality doesn't work that way. Every day closes a chapter that can never be rewritten. Every sunrise gives us possibilities. Every sunset quietly removes some of them forever. That's why I believe one of the greatest mistakes we make is confusing hope with action. We hope people know how much they mean to us. We hope they'll understand why we became so busy. We hope they'll still be there whenever we finally find the courage to reach out. Hope is powerful, but love requires movement. Imagine standing at the edge of a launch pad after years of preparation. Every calculation has been completed. Every system has been tested. Every engineer has done their part. At some point, there is only one thing left to do: launch. If you spend your entire life preparing but never launch, the mission never begins. Relationships are no different. You can rehearse conversations in your mind for years. You can imagine the perfect words, the perfect timing, and the perfect circumstances. But until you actually speak, nothing changes. The future you're hoping for cannot begin with thoughts alone. It begins with action. Now, let me be clear. Reaching out to someone doesn't guarantee the outcome you want. They may have moved on, they may need time, they may not respond the way you imagined. That's part of being human. Love has never come with guarantees, but neither does regret. The difference is that regret stays with you much longer. It's easier to heal from an honest answer than to spend decades wondering what might have happened if you had simply tried. Too many people spend years protecting themselves from rejection, only to discover they were actually protecting themselves from happiness as well. Don't let fear become the author of your future. There is another truth we rarely acknowledge. Pride often disguises itself as dignity. We tell ourselves we're respecting their space, waiting for the right moment, or protecting our self-respect. Sometimes that's true. Healthy boundaries matter. Not every relationship should be revived, especially if it was harmful or abusive. But there are also relationships that ended not because love disappeared, but because communication did. Because two people were equally afraid, because neither wanted to be the first to say, "I still care." Think about how many lives could be changed if someone simply chose courage over comfort. A single phone call, a single letter, a single message, a single visit. Sometimes that's all it takes to begin healing years of silence. And even if the relationship never becomes what it once was, you'll have something infinitely valuable. Peace, because you'll know you chose honesty instead of fear. You'll know you gave life a chance to surprise you instead of allowing assumptions to make every decision. One thing I've learned is that the most valuable opportunities in life rarely announce themselves. They appear quietly. They ask for courage instead of certainty. They require action before confidence arrives. Love works exactly the same way. It asks you to take one step before you can see the entire path. It asks you to believe that authenticity is stronger than ego. It asks you to trust that speaking from your heart is never wasted, even when the outcome isn't what you expected. And perhaps the greatest gift you can offer another human being is not perfection, success, or wealth. It's your genuine presence, your honest words, your willingness to be vulnerable, because those are the things people remember long after achievements have faded into history. Years from now, no one will care how many messages you almost sent. No one will remember the conversations you rehearsed but never had. The only moments that shape your story are the ones where you chose action over hesitation, courage over comfort, and love over fear. So if someone still lives in your heart, don't spend another year convincing yourself that tomorrow will be easier than today. Pick up the phone, write the message, book the flight, knock on the door. Say the words you've been carrying in silence. Let the people who matter know they matter while they can still hear your voice. Because the greatest tragedy is not hearing no. It is reaching the end of your journey and realizing that the most important words of your life were never spoken at all.